Okay, welcome back to another episode of The Coffee Show. I am Kirk Pearson. It's The Coffee Show with Kirk Pearson. Got a very special guest today. He is my coffee supplier. He is one of the eminent coffee figures in all of Melbourne, former Australian Barista Champion, runner-up World Barista Champion, Dave Makin. Welcome to the show.
What an introduction.
Yeah,
thank
you. Just before we get into anything else, I just want to congratulate you on the recent sale of your business. So well done.
How exciting is it?
Yeah.
I sell probably once a year.
So I have this running joke with Dave. Someone actually really convinced me that you had sold your business about a year and a half ago. I was like, damn, Dave sold. I thought he would have told me before he told this guy. Talked to you about it and you're like, oh, relax. This happens every 6 months. Why does that start?
I think a lot of the time it starts because people in other wholesale coffee companies like to plant seeds of doubt into our customers' minds. And one of the reasons a lot of customers obviously buy from Axil is the team. We have such a fantastic team of staff and they've obviously been there a long time. And one of the ways to try and, I think, break that and break that connection is to talk about the fact that we've sold somehow. But to be honest, yeah, that's an Australian thing, isn't it? It's tall poppy.
It's funny how bitchy the coffee industry can be in that regard when people are competing for other customers and all that sort of stuff. It's like, yeah, making up stuff like that becomes the norm.
Yeah, it is really normal. And to be honest, I hear similar rumors about other specialty coffee companies in Australia as well. So it's not just about Axil. You know, I hear those ones a lot more often, but yeah, somebody will always talk about one of our competitors as well. And I'm like, look, we'll wait and see. It's
kind of like the specialty coffee version of like trade rumors in the NBA or something, you know? There's always these little murmurs going on. But I digress. We shall continue. I just read something on my phone about a lady who's got some cafes in Brisbane and she was getting berated on the weekend for having a surcharge over the public holiday weekend. Why do cafes have a surcharge on weekends and public holidays?
It's interesting that you said that was from Queensland because Queensland traditionally has had weekend surcharges for a very long time, a lot longer than we've had them in Melbourne. Part of the problem, though, to be honest, is Easter weekend is not around the public holidays. Everyone knows the Friday and the Monday are public holidays. A lot of people argue around the Saturday and the Sunday, but they are gazetted public holidays. So we've had that problem before as well in our stores, is particularly on the Saturday and Sunday, people will argue it's not a public holiday today, but it actually is by the law.
Mm-hmm. And why do you apply the surcharge?
Look, it's interesting, but obviously they're very busy days. Normally, everybody else is off work while hospitality is working their hardest. It's the wage percentage. It's the problem in our industry. I spoke to a friend of mine before the podcast has got furniture stores here in Melbourne. They run their stores at about 15% labour. And so then when you open your furniture store on a public holiday and you're at 225% of the normal rate, that 15% jumps to like what, 31, 32%. They actually break even on a public holiday because it only goes up by 15%. The problem in hospitality, and particularly over the last few years, our labour percentage now, they're all creeping more like 35 to 40%, which means when you take the 40%, times it by 225, you're talking a labour cost on a public holiday in a general cafe or restaurant that will be close to 80%. And so therefore, it erodes any profit plus more.
So cafes, they don't make windfall profits on a public holiday charging a surcharge. It's just kind of what you got to do.
Yeah, it contributes to overheads, which is why we do it. So it does help still, obviously, to pay rent and electricity and some other overheads. And one of the biggest reasons we actually open is it means that our customer base can continue to come to us, because if we were closed, they may go to a competitor, and then you run the chance that then they don't come back again. So we know that when we open on public holidays, we lose money. We just try to mitigate that loss through a surcharge.
Right. Well, I just thought I'd ask that while it's hot off the press for me. But let's go back to when you first started Axil Coffee and why you first started Axil Coffee Roasters. So let's go back in further. Why did you even get into coffee?
Yeah, well, if we go back that far, I mean, once I came out of school, I always wanted to do hospitality. So I did a Bachelor of Business in Hotel Management. I always envisaged being a hotel manager. And so, I worked in hospitality. I did a little bit in hotels and a little bit of restaurants. And I actually randomly started working with somebody, and they'd formerly been a coffee roaster, and they were working on a coffee project at the time, and they started bringing in some different coffee samples and tasting some different coffee. And that was like 2000, 2001. And so it was kind of at that point where people weren't really understanding the differences between the different origins and different processes and things like that. So yeah, it got me into a little bit, and then I got my first job in coffee. Not long after, I ended up as a sales rep with Piazza d'Oro Coffee, which is Dow Egberts, which is now JDE Pete's. So at the time, they were the second largest coffee roaster in the world. And so I worked with them for a period of time as a sales rep, selling coffee on the streets of Melbourne, banging on doors, and that's
telling people who their businesses have sold and whatnot.
That's it. Yeah, you've got to swap coffee companies. So yeah, but so I started in sales and did that for a while, and then after a few years of doing that, I moved to a local roaster here in Melbourne and worked for them for about 5 years. And it was around that time, during that Piazza d'Oro stage, where their sales rep in Sydney was the current Australian Barista Champion, a guy called Mako LaPena. And he taught me how to make coffee, and he trained me for the first ever Victorian Barista Championship, and that was in 2004. And so I spent a few days training, and then I won the Victorian Barista Championship that year. So that kind of set me down that path of barista competitions.
Do you remember what coffee you used?
Oh, no way. No, and back in those days, we used blends. Like, we didn't use single origins.
Right. So
it would have been a blended coffee, and
blend it and send it. So when did Axil Coffee come into the equation here?
So then we skip a few years ahead. I was competing and everything like that, and I met my now wife, Zoe. And Zoe and I started Axil together. And why did we start Axil? Well, at the time, Zoe was a coffee roaster. So she was roasting coffee for another coffee roaster. And I was still in sales, like running around town, looking after cafes and everything. So it seemed like a natural progression to, obviously, she was roasting coffee all day. I was selling coffee all day. So it just sort of seemed like the natural move to open our own business together.
And you've been going for 15 years now.
Yeah, we're a few weeks short of our 15-year birthday.
How many stores do you have now?
We've got 16 stores at the moment, branded Axil Coffee Roasters.
Yeah, right. And you supply how many cafes?
A couple of hundred wholesale accounts.
A couple of hundred?
Yeah.
Okay. So things are going well. What, from then until now, so since you started Axil Coffee to today, what do you think's changed the most about the coffee industry?
I think there's good quality coffee available in pretty much most suburbs across Melbourne now. Yeah. And I think at the time in 2010, that wasn't the case. There was some small pockets and some small groups of people that were doing it quite well. But now, you can see a lot of shops producing quite high quality coffee.
Is it just me? Maybe I've been in coffee for 10 years now. And I used to hear people say this to me, and now I'm guiltily saying it myself, but I kind of have this belief that the golden years of coffee have passed us, where I feel like the quality of coffee isn't as high as it used to be across the board. And it's because I think my suspicion is you just can't buy the same quality of coffee for the same price you could back then. Would you agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Part of the problem, which I'm sure you can touch on as well, is the price of a cup of coffee hasn't kept up over the last 25 years since I've been in it. It hasn't moved quickly enough, and therefore we've got ourselves into this problem now where we're stuck at a certain price point and we can't move it quickly enough. And so you're seeing a lot of coffee companies are having to compromise on quality to be able to still get the coffee in the bag at the price they need to do it.
Well, you're probably better qualified to answer this question than I think than a lot of people in Melbourne. What do you miss about pre-COVID Melbourne compared to now? Because I just think the city's lost a lot of its step. It's lost a lot of its pizzazz. Is there anything you would say on that? Do you agree? Disagree?
It's dramatically different to how it used to be. If you have nighttime venues in Melbourne, in the CBD, you are back, probably more revenue than you were pre-COVID. It's the Monday to Friday coffee shop operators that is the bracket that I sit in that's really seen the most change. And we've seen the most change, obviously, around people working from home. working from home consistently on Mondays and Fridays. And so that's here to stay. Like, it's not going to change now. We're 5 years post-COVID. Any visions we had of it returning to the way it used to be are gone. I have young kids myself and can understand why people like it and enjoy it. I mean, the challenge for employers will be making sure they continue to get the productivity out of their employees.
Yeah. Do you think the city's better for it though?
No, it's definitely not better for it. And part of the problem from a hospitality operator like myself is it's the hiring and rostering is now a real problem, because we used to hire full-time staff Monday to Friday. They pretty much started the same time every day, finished the same time every day. Now we can't do that. We're looking at our revenue on Monday would be half of our revenue that we do on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and similar on Friday. And so now we just can't hire full-time staff. We're having to hire casuals. We're having to hire part-timers. And therefore, you're also not getting the quality because you can't offer the full-time work. So I think it's fundamentally changed who's available for those positions. And then because you're not as busy, I think the shops therefore don't get the efficiencies in them. And therefore, I mean, I know, look at the numbers, we're nowhere near as profitable as we used to be.
Yeah. And I just kind of feel like you're right. It's here to stay. And you know, as much as coffee shop owners and operators and managers or whatever want to complain about it, it's not changing back.
30% of the population's in Victoria, isn't it? Like 20 or 30% is employed by the government.
Yeah.
A government employees, like, you know, there is no way coffee shop owners, what would be 0.001% of the population?
Yeah.
We're not going to see any policy change around work from home.
Well, it's interesting because to enlighten overseas listeners, we have a two-party system effectively. So only one of two parties ever gets elected, Labor and Liberal. Liberal over here has actually the opposite meaning to the American system, where they'll call Liberals like left-wing people. Over here, it's the right-wing party, the Republican equivalent.
Yeah.
And Labor Party is kind of like the Democrats, which, yeah, people in England would understand as well. But the Liberal candidate, he actually had a policy when the campaign started to sort of mandate people go back to work, kind of like Elon Musk and Donald Trump have over in America. And I actually thought that's the only policy that might be like a vote winner for him. You know, he's not offering anything else that people really respect. And then they backflipped on it. So I was like, oh, okay, interesting.
I can't believe they didn't do their research before he announced that.
Yeah.
Like, surely he's obviously announced it, and then the polling data has shown that it's a massive flop. But I would have thought you could poll that before they announced it, and I could have told him that wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Everybody I speak to has no interest whatsoever in going back to the office full-time.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I would like and you've been to these places, so you can probably better comment. Melbourne's probably the American equivalent to like Portland, or it's a progressive place. I don't know what the equivalent will be in Europe, but like it's a very progressive place. So it wouldn't have worked well for him here at all.
And this is also the state that he needs to take seats in if he is going to take power federally. They're saying that 10 of the swing seats or something are in this state. So, I mean, for me, I'm not too invested in it. I don't think it's really going to make much of a difference what happens on a day-to-day basis at Axil Coffee Roasters, which party gets in. Both of our parties, for anyone listening internationally, sit like a little bit more centered, a little bit more closer together than a lot of parties overseas do, where they're a lot further apart. So we'll just wait and see. But I in the 15 years of running Axil, parties have come in and out of the state level, and at federal level, we just do what we do.
Yeah, well, I have this kind of long-held, or this, maybe it's not long-held, perhaps it's more of a recent belief that's formed with me. No government really has like a big material impact on your life. And very few of them really can't, like, the system is designed to get people reelected, not like have true reform. So, I mean,
I think that is correct in Australia, and I think we as Australians can have that opinion and it won't make a massive effect, but that's not the case in a lot of other countries around the world, depending on which political party gets in El Salvador or Venezuela or different places like that. It can have fundamental changes on on how people live in those countries and how they're treated. So we are very lucky as the lucky country, and part of that is that either of those two parties will get some things right and get some things wrong. I'm neither, there's some things both of them do well and do badly.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the podcast now. So one of the questions I concocted in my mind was, Do you think Australian specialty coffee has become a bit of a victim of its own success? Like, there's, as you said before, the average coffee in Melbourne is pretty good, but there's so many people who have decided to enter the coffee industry for like what is now a reduced pool of sort of customers. Do you think it has been a bit of a victim of its own success in that regard?
Yeah, it's definitely, one of the biggest problems with hospitality is it has a very low barrier to entry. So you can, go and lease and fit out a cafe quite easily and open one. That's also why we have such a, really high failure rate. A number of cafes that didn't survive COVID and even more so the cost of living. We've seen more and more closings. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy to open them, but I think we're seeing them just as quickly close. So, yeah, definitely be careful, around opening cafes in the current market.
What are some of the biggest challenges that coffee roasters like yourself face today? Like, we see so much on the news about obviously the problems that hospitality are having. And then there's actually been a lot of recent PR on coffee and why the price of that's rising for various different reasons. So what are some of the reasons you would say are the biggest challenges for coffee roasters right now? And I think this, within a global context, this will hit in a lot of countries, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we're all facing the same problem at the end of the day is that, the price of coffee is increasing. The problem, coffee prices increasing is actually a good thing because what will happen at a farm level is if the farmers are actually being paid a fair and reasonable amount for their coffee, they will plant more coffee crops. And so they won't plant avocado, they'll plant coffee. And so the problem with that, though, is that it takes 4 years before they get a usable crop. So even if they're planting now, it's going to take some time. But paying more is probably a good thing. Part of the problem, though, is because it's happened so quickly and so dramatically that I think at a wholesale level, we are struggling to increase our prices as quickly as they need to be increased. And part of that's been the problem that we haven't increased them very much over the last 25 years. So, I mean, I sold coffee, as we talked about earlier, in the early 2000s. We were selling coffee at $24, $25 a kilo 25 years ago. And you fast forward 25 years later, a lot of roasters are still selling coffee at, say $28 to $30, like a little bit more, but nowhere near as much as they probably needed to move it. So I think that's the bigger problem is it's a good thing they've increased, but because of how dramatic it's come, it's caught a lot of people off guard. And I think there'll be a lot of coffee roasters this year that are going to feel the pinch.
And it's interesting, some context there. So during COVID, I think the commodity price for coffee, so coffee is traded as a commodity, I think it was below $1 US per pound. So
yeah, they got down to like 82 cents or something.
Yeah. And if I checked this morning, I think it was about $3.80.
I check every morning, Kirk. Yeah. It was $3.80.
Yeah. So that's like, what, 500% more? 600, maybe more?
It's at some crazy levels at the moment. It is interesting because it is an inverted market at the moment. So I can buy coffee futures for December delivery that are actually cheaper than I can buy coffee today. So even the market itself sees this is going to come back. And so we're just forecasting. One of the most interesting things I learned during this time is, would you believe for every single person that actually touches coffee, trades in coffee, roasters coffee, there's 99 people that are in suits and tie on a laptop trading in coffee futures affecting the price. So they have 99% more influence than the coffee roasters have in the world. So somebody wakes up this morning, Goldman Sachs, and says, put $500 million in the coffee futures this morning. That affects the price more than any of us can possibly affect the price.
So is that like sort of business people speculating and trying to sort of flip coffee and make a buck here and there?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And then what will happen is, and that's all to do around supply and demand at the moment. And so obviously they're looking at the fact that demand has continued to increase, particularly over the last few years. So we're seeing other economies starting to drink coffee that have traditionally been tea drinking countries. And so that's affecting demand. And then the other side of it is obviously we've seen fires and floods, and we've seen a lot of problems that have affected crops at a farm level. So supply's dropped. So they're looking at the coffee market and deciding to put money into it because they believe they can make money on it. But at some point in the future, if if they get a few good crops and everything settles a little bit and they plant more coffee trees and supply increases long term, people will start to take their money out of coffee futures and they'll put them into soybeans or cocoa, or they'll put them into something else. And then you'll see that the price will settle again. I don't believe it's going to get anywhere near 82 cents again, but I definitely believe that we'll see the market settle at some point in the future.
You're right to say that the demand's increased globally. Just more and more people are starting to drink coffee and get interested in it and all that sort of thing. And then as well, like I was actually in Brazil in 2018 when the opposite of what's happening right now happened then. So there was a huge oversupply because rainfall during the harvest just happened at the right time. And so the trees in Brazil literally produced like 30 to 40% more, and it just flooded the market, and the seed price just took a nosedive. And so, which is the total opposite to what's happened right now. So look, I mean, climate change is varying and all that sort of stuff, but we'll probably see that happen again at some point.
I certainly hope so, but I mean, that's what futures is all about, right? You're trying to predict the future. It has such a big influence on it. I certainly hope it settles to a reasonable level. To be honest, we're talking commodity prices, and it's one of the interesting things that's happened at Axil is we talk about direct trade and we talk about buying, and we've bought from farmers from our first year, so for 15 years. And this year we went back to origin and we've paid overs. So when it was at 80 cents, we didn't pay anywhere near that. We're paying dramatically more than that. And this year we went back to origin and we were buying coffee, and we actually locked our contracts in at nearly 70 cents a pound under the commodity price, because we went back and we said, well, this has got to go both ways. We've paid overs for 14 years, dramatically over for 14 years, because you produce great coffee. You can't gouge us this 1 year because the seed price is suddenly above. So we paid more than we paid in previous years, which I think is fair and reasonable, but we definitely didn't pay the seed price.
That's kind of the way relationships work, right? And that's why it's so important to have them in business, whether you're in coffee, other suppliers, whatever. It always pays to sort of have a good relationship and a long term. This is why it's probably not always best to just take the cheap deal then and there, because in the end, you always pay somehow, don't you?
Definitely. So yeah, it's definitely worked out well on this occasion.
All right. The Australian dollar. So coffee is traded in USD, and I spoke to some Canadian counterparts about this as well. And basically, because our currency is so weak right now, and we have to always purchase in US dollars, it effectively just means you're getting a double whammy with the price rise, doesn't it? So you've explained this to me well before this podcast happened. Explain to us the impact of the Australian dollar, and then if you could explain it with some of your figures that you have.
Yeah, it's so crazy, isn't it? The US dollar, and it goes back to a whole lot of decisions that were made a long time before I was probably born, that the US dollar is the global economy that everybody uses. I mean, we buy Brazil coffee. Can we not pay in real? Well, it's just not the way it's done. It's always been done in US dollars, and now all of a sudden it's having a massive effect on what we're buying. So yeah, we look back at when we started Axil in 2010, the US dollar, $1 Australian was buying $1.04.
Yeah, well, that was just off the back of the GFC. So their currency was particularly weak.
Yeah. So it's amazing now to look, and we're scraping 64 cents today.
Yeah.
So it has such a dramatic effect. So even on a small company like us, or small to medium, I'd say, the US dollar, if it moved even by 5 cents, that it'd make about $500,000 a year difference on our coffee purchases.
Wow. So by 5 cents on the currency price, you would instantly just have 500 grand more to sort of play with.
More cash flow, yeah.
Wow.
So it also means, it affects what you might buy, or decisions of the quality you might buy, and different things like that as well. And that's the hidden factor at the moment, is that the US dollar's, a real problem for us.
Yeah, well, and they're working really hard to actually to protect that right now as well, because there's this organization formed, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, I think it is. It's like this kind of union of countries that they kind of want to challenge that American hegemony in the global economic market, which I find fascinating, but we'll see how that one plays out. This is a coffee podcast, not an economics podcast. Shipping inefficiencies. So obviously down in Australia, down under, we call it. So you got to ship it a lot further. And our ports are pretty inefficient as well, when there's also frequently strikes there. So that's another thing that kind of drags up the costs.
Yeah, it is a small part of the overall thing. I mean, you're shipping a container with 18,000 kilos of coffee in it. Even if the shipping increases, once you spread that over the coffee in the container, it doesn't have anywhere near as much of an effect, obviously, as the C price and the US dollar at the moment. But yeah, they're all contributing factors where we're seeing all those little things increase.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about with you is gas and electricity prices. So cafes run off a lot of electricity. Roasters run off a lot of gas and electricity. And in Australia, we're one of probably the most resource plentiful countries in the entire world. And we pay some of the most for electricity. So you've got some figures there as well from your electricity bill from, I think it was 2019 to now. So can you explain some of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just looked at one of our cafes, which is our original cafe on Bearwood Road in Hawthorne. And we had a look at our electricity bill from 2019, and it was about $25,000 a year for electricity. And this year it's $46,000.
So that's what? How many as a percentage?
65% increase in electricity in 5 years.
Wow. And this is all bizarre, and electricity just keeps becoming more and more expensive in Australia. And we don't actually sort of manage our resource wealth as a country well at all. So for the common man in Australia, so it's not just businesses, obviously, it's people in their homes and things like that getting slugged big bills. So I've written down 3 countries here and the programs they sort of have for sort of redistributing that wealth and kind of and reinvesting it. So in Norway is actually a massive oil producing country. They have a $1.8 trillion sovereign wealth fund that last year produced a $222 billion profit, US dollars, that they're able to use to sort of fund intergenerational programs, pensions. They've got a population of 5 million, by the way, and they've got a sovereign wealth fund like this. In the UAE, so they struck oil, I think, in the 1950s or 60s. Before that, not many people live there. And to this day, 90% of their population is expats, so they're not Emiratis. So the UAE benefits tax-free income, free healthcare, free education, housing benefits, employment benefits, marriage and family support, utilities and fuel subsidies, access to government grants and investments, travel and passport privileges. So if you're an Emirati, like it's almost like there's 2 classes of human beings over there. Like the native people, like it's almost like they don't have to work. Like they're sitting around at coffee shops, they've got their really nice candles on, and they've just got these enormous benefits because the government's kind of like planned for it. They're like, okay, we've got this huge amount of wealth coming in. It won't last forever because it's oil. And they've just redistributed it through their economy. And then you look at Saudi Arabia, free or subsidized healthcare, which I must say we have too, education, utilities, high-paying public sector jobs, direct financial support to social welfare and housing programs, and then the Vision 2030 initiatives when, I'll condense here, but they've effectively bought the entire sport of golf and boxing. If you watch those, Saudi Arabia pretty much owns it now. And then Australia, no sovereign wealth fund, no subsidies for energy, no free education, and increasing intergenerational wealth gap. And your electricity bills are expensive as all hell. So, look, I mean, not coffee related, but how does that make you feel?
Feels like we must be in election year, Kirk, with all this chat around this. But yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't seem very balanced. It seems like we do export a lot of like natural resources, and it doesn't seem like we're really getting paid that well. But I'd imagine it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Well, some of the reasons are, so we privatize our industry. So the one of the big challenges, which I'll give credit to Australia for, is like the country's so big relative to the population. So there's not that many people really filling it. But the network's obviously got to be massive because you've got to have poles and wires and stuff across the whole thing. But a lot of it's privatized. So even when the international markets spike, we still get charged just as much as people overseas do. And it's like, well, hang on, you guys ship all this overseas, and then it's businesses like yours, it's people in households and things like that pay the cost. And it's just, I just think it's bizarre. Like there's literally no reprieve. Anyway, we'll get back onto the coffee stuff, but
I hope you find one for us. Okay.
But if I'm to condense it, keeping all that in mind, the energy's higher, wages are higher, rents are higher, raw coffee prices are higher. ladies and gentlemen, that's why your coffee's more expensive these days. So it's just like, I wanted to say that at the end because like we're having this such big debate and the discourse has become so toxic and negative about coffee prices and price of food really. But no one really seems to contextualize all this when it comes to at the end, not well anyway.
No, not well. And people, once again, I think it's more about the fact of how quickly we're having to move our prices. And I think that's what the public's really noticing is I think if we move the price of coffee, which we should have done over the last 25 years, if we had to move 10 cents a year, like on a cup of coffee, and we had to move like $1 a kilo at a wholesale level, then wholesale coffee would be $40 a kilo. A cup of coffee would have incrementally got to like $6.50. The problem around it is that we kind of didn't really move very much. And therefore, because we didn't, we're now having to make these massive leaps. I know a coffee roaster in Melbourne, I saw the letter myself, put out a letter a couple of weeks ago, $10 a kilo wholesale price increase to every customer. Flat $10 a kilo that went up.
So that's probably like what, 20 or maybe 33% of what it originally was sort of thing?
Yeah. Went from $25 a kilo to $35 a kilo pretty much overnight. Yeah. So 33% increase. I think that's the problem. I think if we had been able to move incrementally, then it probably would have, everyone would have taken a little bit better.
Well, this segues into what I was going to ask you next, which is like, do you think there's a looming crisis in wholesale coffee? So obviously now we're coming off the back of this. Everyone's been like, in some ways, a lot of this we couldn't avoid as an industry. But in some ways, I also feel like collectively we need to own up to a few things. Like everyone's, like you said, they compete on price sort of thing, but they just offer what are now kind of irresponsible deals to customers thinking like, let's give you an example. So to the common listener who might not know what we're talking about, it's very common for a coffee roaster to go to a cafe and say, I'll give you, if you purchase this much coffee, you can pay $30 per kilo, plus I'll give you a coffee machine and 2 grinders, let's just say. Nowadays, that's just not financially responsible. And then if you look within the context of, okay, maybe someone's on that sort of arrangement, but then on top of that, there's less customers, so they're selling less, and the coffee roaster's liable for this kind of agreement where they have to finance the equipment themselves. So it makes me wonder, like, is there a looming financial crisis in wholesale coffee like that?
I think there's a number of coffee roasters that haven't sat down and necessarily worked the numbers out very accurately around what they're offering, how long that piece of equipment's going to last, what's the repairs and maintenance on it. Like there's a whole lot of hidden things. And then obviously the cost of delivery, the cost of the sales rep and all those things. And then what they should be offering that deal at. But I mean, it's no different in any other industry. I mean, some people will put things out at a lower price, be happy to make a lower margin, or, some people chase volume. I think that's particularly one of the biggest problems in the coffee industry. And I have someone I know quite well in the coffee industry, and I bump into them every so often. And every time they ask me, how many kilos a week you roast? And I'm like, you're asking the wrong question. Like, it doesn't matter how many kilos a week you roast. That's not really the number. The number is around like, how profitable is your business, and how well are you looking after the team and doing it? Because you've got to be profitable, therefore, to expand, to be able to give your team opportunities to grow with you. Simply chasing volume for the sake of chasing volume is one of the biggest problems in the wholesale coffee market.
Yeah, does seem to be this kind of point of pride, but maybe it's not really something to be so proud of, as you put it. And I think it's the same in cafes as well. Like, what amount do you move each week? But like you rightly point out, how much money do you make each week? Can you pay your bills each week? Can you do all this and that? And I think maybe we need to have a bit of a paradigm shift as an industry as to what's healthy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do and I don't. I just think there is always going to be people that go out there and offer deals that I would never offer, perhaps. But maybe they're happy just to sign those accounts because they want them, and they take them. I don't think we're suddenly, after 25 years of doing this, I don't think we're going to suddenly see all the coffee companies in Melbourne start putting financial deals for the cafes that make sense. There'll always be a company at different points that does it. One of the biggest ones we've also seen over the years is in the early 2000s, yes, we offered free coffee machines, but it was like a San Marino. And it was a couple of like, super jolly Mazzas or something, right? Now the expectation, it's like a 3-group La Marzocco.
It's almost like...
And you like grind by weights and it went from being like $7,000 to $10,000 worth of equipment for a cafe, and it's now $30,000.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's almost like you've got to, buy this and then you'll get a car for free as well. Because, if you factor in a coffee machine and 2 modern coffee grinders, it's almost the value of a car. You could go buy yourself a Toyota Corolla with that money.
I can't wait.
Yeah. But I've recently had a couple of small coffee roasters reach out to me and say, I don't think I'll be here in the next 12 months. So do you expect that there'll be a lot of people just sort of close down, consolidate, merge with others, what have you?
We'll see a huge amount of movement globally, I think, around that. There's already a couple of Melbourne coffee roasters that they've put themselves on the market. And of course, we're all talking about it, and business brokers ringing around and offering this company's for sale or that company's for sale. Are you interested?
So that's actually actively happening now?
Yeah, actively, definitely happening at the moment. I definitely think you'll see that. And the reason you'll see that consolidation is that certain companies will look to buy companies, hoping that, yes, they might not make any money out of it for the next 12 months or 18 months. But if the C price does settle in 18 months from now, then they'll then pick that volume up and that business up and it'll become more profitable. Right. But I definitely see, there'll be a lot of consolidation.
Are you in the market?
I've sold 6 times during this podcast.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, some brokers have rang you up and asked if you're interested.
Yeah, in buying another company.
Right.
So, yes, I've had one business broker that's rung me without fail. He must have a calendar reminder.
Okay.
He rings me every 6 months and asks me to list the company for sale with him.
Yep.
And I just, no, it's interesting. But, that's how they make their money. But I definitely think you'll see a lot of movement in the next 6 to 12 months of people selling.
It's interesting. There's a lot of celebrities that are kind of getting into the coffee industry at the moment. Patrick Mahomes has got a ready-to-drink range. Jimmy Butler. His is actually quite good. I got to try his coffee over in Dubai.
Did you know that he doesn't even call himself, it's Big Face, but he doesn't even call it, we looked at it the other day, right? He doesn't call it a coffee company. He calls it a lifestyle brand.
Right.
Like the website, when you go onto it, it's not Big Face Coffee Roasters. It's Big Face lifestyle brand or something.
Well, it's interesting. They do a lot of fashion and things like that, and it's almost like designer wear. And then I bought a bag of his coffee while I was over in Dubai, and the packaging's immaculate. Like he's really got it sorted out. And from all understanding, they're doing quite well. He's doing really well out of it. But I guess that's like having a personal brand really helping you out in the business world. And some of his coffee's pretty good. Like I tried it. I was like, yeah, it's not bad. And they had their setup at the World of Coffee there. It was really good. So I think he's actually set up for a lot of success.
I would agree. It's a really strong brand.
And then, you've got people like Emma Chamberlain. What she's doing is a little bit different, like the kind of whole like selling matcha and vanilla latte sort of thing. But hey, you never know. I think we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Each to their own on that one.
Hugh Jackman's got a coffee brand of all people as well.
Yeah. So. Is it something tall, man? What's it called? It's in New York. He's got a couple of shops as well.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but it is there. How do you think that we as an industry can better sell the story or message of specialty coffee? And I'll start off with my take here, if you don't mind. So I'm someone who used to have a brand of coffee called Sub-Zero Coffee. And basically what we did was we sold coffee out of a freezer, individual portions, kind of like a wine list for coffee. And the whole thing is, people who drink their espresso cups with their pinky lifted, the coffee connoisseurs of sorts. And, I enjoyed it. People enjoyed it. But obviously it's very niche. Whereas now I operate a coffee shop in Melbourne, make far more coffee. I make a blend that's called strawberry cheesecake, and people just love it. They don't, one, the flavor's there, but two, they don't have to be told the whole story and bombarded by all this stuff. And I just don't think people really care. Like, not many people really actually care that much. Do you agree?
I would say you're right and wrong. I would say there's a level of engagement that each customer wants, and you need to be able to pick that level of engagement from a very early stage. somebody comes in and wants to buy a bag of coffee, the first thing you should always say is, do you know what you want? Because if they do, then great, sell that to them. They're ready to purchase. And it's the same as like for most people, our tasting notes on our retail coffee bags are all they pretty much read. But then there's a small percentage of people that then read country and farm. There's an even smaller percentage of people that read then altitude or processing or even know what that means. So I think you've just got to get the level of interaction right for each individual customer. So I think there's a market for your Sub-Zero. I was a customer of it. And I think there's obviously definitely a market for a strawberry cheesecake latte.
Well, the strawberry cheesecake one outsells it in droves, let me just tell you. But it's interesting. We just had a chat in the last episode with Orlando Marzo, World Bartender of the Year in 2018. And he's got this company called Drinks by Loro. And he's kind of done something similar. So he'll just have like a spirit that's ready to roll. You just put it over ice and he'll call it panettone, or he's got coffee cream, kind of doing that sort of thing with alcohol. And like, I just think that simplification it's kind of what a lot of people like but that's not me saying to businesses, don't know the information that you can then pass on, because that nuance of specialty coffee, to me, it's kind of like I'm seeing it more now as I've matured in my older age as like, it's like an opt-in thing. If someone opts in, you should be able to give them all that information.
I agree. That's exactly what I'm saying. If a customer asks the question, wants to know more about it, I mean, you definitely want to be able to give that level of information.
One thing I'm really excited about in the future is like, maybe we can use AI and virtual reality to really take customers there, because going to Origin is not realistic for most baristas even. But if we can sort of take our customers to Origin digitally, I just think that's something that excites me. I don't know whether that'll really execute what I'm trying to do here, but
I've got it for you ready. Would you believe pre-COVID, we engaged a film crew in Costa Rica and we filmed a huge amount of footage in 360-degree film. And we put it together, and it was going to be for MICE one year, where people could come on the stand and put on the goggles, and you would be able to drive around the coffee farm and look and everything like that. So
where is it?
Yeah. Well, it's just sitting on a cutting room floor. We never finished it and never did it. COVID hit, and it's one of those projects we never circled back to.
Well, can I like issue my challenge to you here that needs to be released?
Yeah.
The Makin cut.
Some old school footage.
Do you remember a few years ago Justice League came out and it was a bit of a flop? And then there was the Schneider cut, which everyone campaigned for years and years and years. I recently rewatched the Schneider cut, but could this be the Makin cut? Could we release the Makin cut?
I don't know if it's going to get the same level of traction, but we should definitely do something with it, considering we did all the footage.
All right. If you're listening to the podcast, please comment in the comments section, #release the Makin cut. If you have an Instagram, please post a story with Dave Makin's face, whatever, Costa Rica, whatever.
No, don't
#release the Makin cut. I'm starting it right here. Johan, we're releasing the Makin cut. He's just enthusiastically nodding yes. All right, circling back to something slightly political again. I don't want to impart on anyone that we're taking sides here, because really, who gives a shit? But if you were talking to the Prime Minister and lobbying for the coffee industry or the hospitality industry, what would you be saying to them?
I don't know if there's a lot the government's going to be able to do around this. I think one of the things I would love to see a little bit around that barrier to entry we talked about. It'd be great to see that you have to complete something to be able to open a cafe or a restaurant. And for me, that's almost safeguarding a little bit to some people that come racing in with, they've been accountants or doctors or lawyers and come racing in and open a cafe or a wine bar or something with their superannuation, It'd be great to see something around that. I'm sure it's going to be way too complicated and never happen, but it'd be great to see some level of education and understand, so people can read a profit and loss, read a balance sheet, read a cash flow statement, and understand how the three interact and what's the difference between the three. At just that basic level would be great. I think that'd be the only real thing I can see them doing. I know you touched on before, this is visas is the other thing. we have some visa holders. Predominantly, it's in the kitchen because a chef is obviously on the list of approved jobs that can be visa. I think we are getting to the stage where, unfortunately, we have a low unemployment rate. But even still, people don't want to do those jobs. And we're seeing that people don't want to be chefs in Australia, Australian residents, don't want to be chefs, don't want to be aged care workers, don't want to, a lot of those industries are really struggling. And maybe we need to do something a little bit more around that to encourage some people to come in and be able to do those jobs.
Well, this is what really bugs me about that whole debate, because we're a country that, in reality, like there'll be people that probably roast me for saying this, but in reality, we thrive off immigration. And that's not like me being like woke and making a political point about it. It's reality. One of the biggest exports Australia has is actually tertiary education. So and Melbourne is full of students that come here and pay tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars for their degrees. Not only that, they live and work in the city. They pay rent to other people. They go and spend money at other people's businesses. They go get employed at other people's businesses. They pay GST when they spend. The impact they have on Australia is enormous. And as a percentage, our tertiary education sales or exports is probably a lot higher than most other countries in the developed world. And then there's this kind of debate happening right now in Australia where they actually want to reduce the amount of international students, and on the basis that it'll make housing cheaper for people in Melbourne. I don't see where the numbers stack up for that. But then there's also the people that come here in working holidays and things like that as well. And people pay enormous amounts of money to get a visa to come here as well. So it's unambiguously good for the country. And particularly around coffee, like coffee more so than anything else in Melbourne, I would have thought. It's almost like an exportable commodity in itself. A lot of people listening to this would be surprised to learn how many people come here from Japan, Korea, Indonesia, countless other countries to learn how to make specialty coffee the Melbourne way so that they can go back to their country and do it the Melbourne way. Like I worked with a guy at a cafe in Fitzroy years ago, and I went to Nara a few years later in Japan. I bumped into him in a coffee shop working there. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "This is mine." So it's like you'll be astounded to learn how many people go and do that, and that's why. And that's why this frustrates me, because you're correct in saying that there aren't enough Australians to fill the jobs that are available in Melbourne right now. There simply are not.
Oh, there's enough Australians to fill them. The question really is around, do they want to fill those jobs of being chefs and kitchen hands and things?
Yahtzee. So it kind of drives me crazy. And so I think that baristas and it has such a big, profound impact on the hospitality industry. I think baristas and cafe managers should be included on the list of sort of jobs that can be sponsored to stay in Australia. Agree or disagree?
You've jumped between a few different visa holders there too.
That was a whole combination of a lot of things.
Yeah, we're talking about an international visa where they're coming in and working full time. That's where you have to be a chef or whatever. If you're here as a student, you're allowed to work 20 hours a week, and you could work in any industry you like and do up to 20 hours a week. I don't think the baristas and things like that should be put on the full-time international visa program. I think that needs to be chefs, maybe restaurant managers with some sort of qualification. But yeah, we need to make sure that when kids finish school and they come out of school that we upskill them and train them so they can be our baristas and there's jobs for them, because otherwise there's not going to be. I agree with your earlier comment, though. I think, the international students being able to come in, study here, pay really good money, and then be able to work up to 20 hours a week, that fills that perfect little gap. I think the universities need to get wise in Melbourne and put all the kids' classes on Mondays and Fridays.
Yep.
Because I need them on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. And then we'd make rostering a whole lot simpler. But they seem to see like they've got no classes on Mondays and Fridays. And they all got their classes on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is exactly when I need them.
Well, that's when the university lecturers go to work, Dave.
Yeah. That's when all the twats. Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
Oh, I never realized that. Twats.
Yeah.
That's a nice little acronym.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I even think as well, like I'd probably rebut your point about the students being able to work 20 hours. I think is that in today's economy is pretty harsh. Like you can work as a maximum of 20 hours. And to be honest, I think it encourages some under the table style sort of payments as well, where they're underreported. They work for someone but just get paid cash, and that's missed tax revenue for the government and kind of malpractice in a lot of ways as well. So
I think that's the other thing that we haven't really touched on. But I mean, that's one of the big things we saw change during COVID, which was fantastic. A huge amount of that sort of under the table payments things were just completely wiped out. Which I think was a good thing for the industry. That's also what kept cafe prices artificially low in Melbourne. That's where we were seeing the price of a cup of coffee hadn't increased that much.
The cost of compliance, yeah.
Because people weren't compliant. They weren't paying the right penalty rates. They weren't paying PAYG. They weren't paying payroll tax. They weren't paying all these things. And therefore, they could sell a cup of coffee at $4 and still be quite profitable. Realistically, that price probably needed to go up, as we said. And I think that's one of the things now is that the ATO, SRO, like all these different have got very savvy during COVID and are now on top of it. And you can see, isn't it, from the 1st of July this year that you have to pay your PAYG weekly?
Pay as you go tax?
Yes, yeah. You have to pay it every week when you pay your staff to their bank accounts. You have to pay the PAYG to the ATO right then and there. Because we just continually keep seeing businesses in Australia that rack up these huge debts of haven't paid their pay-as-you-go tax, haven't paid their staff superannuation, and then just fall over and put it in liquidation.
I'm surprised that hasn't been implemented earlier, to be honest. It seems like a pretty simplistic and easy and sensible thing to do.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the bigger things that will help to rationalise the hospitality industry is you just won't be able to have businesses that just trail on for 12, 18 months, 2 years, not paying the things they should be paying before they finally get wound up or, closed down. I think now it's going to happen a lot quicker and we'll see a lot more businesses therefore find it hard to survive. And I think we'll see a little bit of a reduction in competition.
On what you touched on just now, there's a gentleman, for those listening abroad, maybe get your Google out. His name's George Columbaris. So he was a MasterChef judge here in Australia, and he had his own. He was a partner in the business. He kind of got sort of framed as the only partner in the business at one point, but he got. It was probably the most prominent Australian case of someone underpaying their staff, and to be honest, I kind of feel like he took the fall for the whole industry. And in the years since, I think there's a prominent Australian chef named Matt Moran who asked the government to implement an amnesty clause so that, businesses could become compliant, because that's how widespread it was. So, I mean, just like it's only a recent thing that Australian businesses have actually become compliant, and George Columbaris kind of took the fall for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting. I met George first in 2004. He was the Age Young Chef of the Year, and he was running a restaurant in Fed Square, and we met. I supplied his coffee to that restaurant that he was at, and so I've known him for a very long time. And for that company made establishment that went down, I think he owned 20% or 25%. So realistically, there was a lot of people also behind the scenes that didn't sort of do what they needed to do. He's definitely got to be accountable for that though as well, and I think that he's taken some level of accountability for it as well. So
he got a public stoning.
Yeah, I think it was pretty harsh given that there was a lot of other people behind it. And a lot of other people fell after that, like Adriana Zumbo, and there was like a number after that, but that's the one obviously that was the big one that hit the front page that everyone sort of refers back to now. But I mean, even Woolworths got done, didn't they? Coles, I think just about everybody.
Yeah, no,
there was. Yeah, I think there's difference. We were talking about this before we started. The award is very complicated. Yeah, and if you're a small business with say 5 to 10 employees, like a cafe or coffee shop, it's near impossible to read the award and understand it. I think at some point it'd be great to see it rationalised and made a little bit simpler.
I had to call your payroll officer to understand it.
Yeah, because you obviously worked for us for a while, and Yeah, it's just really complicated. The problem is it was written in the 70s and it's just had amendments and modifications and things made to it. And it's now, you pretty much need to be a lawyer to read it and understand it. The difference is, though, I think that if you are reading it and have a reasonable understanding of it and you're paying what you think is correct, then you'll be very close. You know what I mean? You might make like some small little errors, but what we used to see was fundamental rorting of the system where people knew very well it wasn't within the award. But realistically, that was just what everybody was doing and yeah, just the way the industry was.
Yeah, huge endemic culture of it for sure.
Yeah, it's a massive problem.
How do you feel about barista competitions? Now, I know you have a bit of a love-hate relationship with them. You've obviously been a beneficiary of it to some degree, but you supported a world barista champion in Anthony Douglas through it, and that took a long time. And then you've got Jack Simpson now, who's two-time Australian barista champion. He's come third and he's come second in the world. So, and looming could win it all this year. How do you feel about it all? Give us just 100% honest.
I like how we've got to the end of the podcast and you've brought up the biggest subject.
Yeah.
I mean, I have mixed feelings. Obviously, I competed for a number of years and then I actually judged and I judged the world final 1 year. And then obviously in recent years, I've been training. So I've sort of competed, judged and trained competitors. The problem is it's extremely subjective. I think my feeling is, and it's just a recent we've been talking about, is I think we need to drop the lowest score perhaps, or maybe we need to drop the highest and the lowest score perhaps, because fundamentally there's always one judge that's slightly out of calibration. And it's and I've been in that position, I've been the judge. It's really hard. You know, it's really subjective. Regardless, they say, you're supposed to, the barista competitor tells you what you'll taste in the cup, and then you're trying to taste like, aromatic compounds and things, like a really complicated thing in the cup. We've all come from different countries. So in the final of the World Barista Championship, you may well get, an Italian judge, a New Zealand judge, a judge from Mexico and a judge from the United States on the final panel. They've all fundamentally eaten different fruit and vegetables, different milk, different, all these things. So getting them all to align is really difficult. And particularly last year with Jack, we saw some calibration and stuff that we were like, a little bit curious as to how they arrived at the scores they arrived at. But ultimately, all the competitors in the top 6 are amazing. And you could probably run the final like 6 different days and get 6 different winners, depending on just what goes right on the day and different things like that. And to me, that's the hardest thing about it. It's not the coffee. It's not the training. It's not the routine. Like everyone has like amazing coffees and routines, and making a great job and is a very deserving World Barista Champion. Like I'm definitely, but yeah, it's just when you go back and look at the sheet, sometimes you're like, Well,
I can understand why you guys, you probably, you'd have every right to feel like, damn it, because Jack lost by 1 point out of like 800 or whatever it is, and it's like 0.1% variance in the whole grand scheme of things. So it's like, in that context, you're like, well, shit, anything could have gone either way and you would have won. But
it's like it was the closest finish ever, being 1 point. I think the thing that really got us is that, in the semi-final, it's when those scores get released that it really compounds the pain. And you see that he was 50 points ahead in the semi-final.
Yeah.
And like I said, we've got the score sheets for the preliminary round, the 4 sensory sheets, the semi-final round, the 4 sensory, and then the final round. And to be able to look at them side by side and understand them. And I'm a real spreadsheet guy. I've spreadsheeted them all and meaned them and averaged them and looked at them, but you can look at them as much as you want. It's not going to change the result. We just need to, go back, work harder and hope it goes our way this year.
Well said. One thing I would say about barista competitions is I feel like we need to improve the coverage of them. I just got told the other day that they don't have commentary during the barista competition anymore in the live streams and things like that. I think that's a step in the wrong direction, to be honest. Like, we need people there explaining better what's going on so that the common man who might watch can understand it all. And I actually proposed to Hidenori Ozaki the other day. I was having a conversation with him saying that we should have commentators that get to taste the competitor's coffee as well, so you can kind of give like a live score. I'm a massive boxing fan, massive MMA fan, and one of the things that I like about boxing is even that's a subjective sport as well. Although you can, it's probably a little less variance because, who's punching each other better. But they have like a live scorecard. So when you're watching a boxing, so Chris Mannix has his live scorecard, and it's like, oh, this is a pretty good indication from a professional's opinion of who could win. And I think we miss out greatly with coffee in that. Like, we don't have it. We don't do the coverage well enough. And I'm going to put my hand up at the World Barista Championship commentary this year. If you need anyone, guys, I'm available. I've got some ideas.
I'm sure that if you sponsor them, they'll happily have you as a commentator.
How much does that cost?
I don't know. I'm sure they'll let you know.
Okay.
But look, it's just not a spectator sport. I agree with you. The commentary would be great on the live stream and in the years past and everything like that. But I don't think you're fundamentally going to change the fact that it is not a spectator sport.
Yes and no, but that doesn't mean we can't make strides towards it. Like, I really do think it's a step backwards if we don't have any commentary whatsoever. And perhaps what has been missing, like we've got past champions, so obviously that have commentated before, so obviously there's a level of credentials there. But we need to inject a bit of showbiz into this. We really do. And this will segue really well into what I was going to ask you in a question or two's time. Is you look at things like Drive to Survive. The F1 series, like that's an objective sport because whoever crosses the line wins. But the amount of drama and the amount of stuff that goes on behind the scenes in F1 I had no idea until I watched it. And people would be shocked to know the amount of bitchiness and the amount of like being butthurt in coffee competitions. Like, I actually think the common man would like to know this stuff.
I'm not so sure, but
debate me. Come on, just lay it on me.
I mean, you're talking about Formula One, and so much goes on behind it. That's just hyped up media. Like, to be honest, that's just that's very good editing. That's what the media does.
It works, Dave.
I'm an F1 fan. I've been going to F1. I don't know. I've been 30 odd Grand Prix. Mm-hmm. Followed it like all my life. Yeah, it's really interesting the hype that's got now around Drive to Survive, but the way they film it, the way they edit it, that's what they do. They're trying to, make it dramatic and make you want to watch it. Could you do that to a barista competition? I'm not sure. Could you do it around like a cafe, maybe more so the industry, because everyone goes to cafes?
But I think but here's where I would argue with you, because I recently went to the UAE, right? Someone actually paid for my ticket to go so that I could bring with me Australian milk. Someone literally paid me to fly to the United Arab Emirates with 5 bottles of Riverina Fresh so that they could use that for a barista competition. Mind you, they won. But this is the level of they throw a bit more money around over there. But also, like, you've had to travel twice with Jack for the World Barista Championship. The way you compare things to taking the luggage, you open a bag of coffee at X amount of time. You've got different bags of coffee roasted, so there's different roast dates, and the level of complexity, like, it's pretty surprising. And I think a lot of more people in sort of public life would respect what competitive baristas do if they actually knew about that.
Yeah, the barista competition is closely aligned with Formula One in terms of, unfortunately, a lot of it's got to do with whoever spends the most amount of money is likely to do very well. So the competitor you're talking about, the one in the UAE, paid for you to fly there and have fresh milk and everything like that, and then they won. The World Barista Championship is no different, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you look at it, a lot of the time it's got to do with whoever can dedicate the most amount of money and spend the most amount of time is going to ultimately do very well at that competition.
How much money do you reckon Axil Coffee Roasters has spent on barista competitions over the years?
Man,
I can see you're about to break that pen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard too, because I mean, we buy coffee and we've just bought some coffee for this year. So the invoice I printed out this morning, but it was 30,000 US from one coffee producer to buy the competition lots in this year.
You may not disclose it, but we're talking, I think of Deborah, Esmeralda.
We're not talking anything at this stage, yeah? Because this podcast will come out before this year's Australian Barista Championship. Coffee. So, yeah. But, I mean, look, it is a lot of money that we spend on it. I like to think that we're pretty humble internally at Axil. We like to compete. We like to do well. But to be honest, we've had a number of years where no one competed at Axil. Jack has always asks the question every year, do you want me to compete? And I'm like, no. It's a personal decision if you want to compete. And if you want to compete, we're happy to support you. But there's definitely no pressure internally. If we don't have a barista competitor next year or the year after, that's okay. We might have one a few years later. And you see that with our success, obviously, that we won the Australian Championship in 2006 and 2008, and then we didn't win until 2011, and then we didn't win again until 2022. And now, we've had a great run with winning 22, 23, and 24. But, who's to say we might now have after this year, we might have a 5 or 10 year gap again when nobody really, wants to compete.
Isn't it interesting, the parallel we can draw here to F1, like the teams cycle through sort of periods of dominance. So you had Veneziano that kind of took over Australia for a long time. Then it was Honor Coffee that took over for quite a while. And now it's you guys. So...
yeah, it cycles, and that's also to do with the fact that a lot of the competitors, such as Anthony, he competed for 7 years before he finally won Australia. So, it's that old story where people are suddenly like, oh, it's amazing that, all of a sudden you're successful. And we're like, all of a sudden? So he's been doing this for 7 years, you know what I mean? Like Anthony lost 6 times before he was able to win once. And that, is in most competitions around the world and most things, that we all compete in, is that we usually lose more times than we win. But it's being able to just keep coming back, keep learning from the mistakes, and keep layering upon it each year to do better.
On the F1 thing, who's your favorite? Who's your team?
It's funny. I don't have a team. I just bounce around as having watched it for so long and been to so many Grand Prix and being into car racing. I just get excited, and it's interesting once again to see guys like Oscar Piastri is fantastic, obviously being Australian, but even Lando Norris to a certain point, he was in that McLaren, when it was not much of a car, and he was out there still trying just as hard to get 12th place as he is now winning Grand Prix. And I just like to see the cycle, the same thing. I like to see some of those people that have been there and worked really hard and then break through and win. It's great. Yeah,
they're both fantastic drivers. If you were to pick another industry to be in and have a career in, what would it be?
Well, other than being a full-time racing car driver, which is obviously not going to happen, to tell you the truth, I probably would have been an architect. And I did a lot of that in school, drawing and design, and really enjoyed it. And I suppose that's probably one of the reasons why I've ended up with as many cafes as I've ended up with. The actual part I like in the cafe industry is I love site selection and then design of the cafe and, the bar. So I still sketch all my cafe designs to scale with a pencil and a ruler, and I sketch out exactly how the bar layout is, exactly where I want, the ice machine or the register or all those things. I draw all of that, and then I give it to my architect / interior designer. He then puts it in the CAD and then makes it look good. But all the actual layout and measurements and what goes where is the bit that I love, and the traffic flows and everything like that within the cafe.
If you just heard my phone alarm go off, I set myself an alarm to remember to bring the Tupperware home because I always forget the Tupperware, and my girlfriend's cracked the shit to me big time. If I don't bring the Tupperware home today, I'm dead. I always leave them at the cafe. Do you get this or do you take the Tupperware home?
No, I do what I'm told.
Okay, because I've been non-compliant in this, and I'm just, if I don't take I fear for my safety if I don't take the Tupperware home today. I really do. Johan's looking at me like, oh my God, Kirk, just take the Tupperware home, and I will. I will bring the Tupperware
And this
home.
will get edited out before it goes online.
No. This is gold. This is the best stuff. Everyone listening at home will be, oh man, I better take the Tupperware home too. But I digress. Race car driving. So you are on the side. You actually do risk your life from time to time and race cars.
I'm a very, very amateur race car driver.
What is it? How do people? Because one thing I never really understood about race car driving or driving in general, motorsports, is the pressure it puts on your body, like the G-forces going through your body and stuff like that. Do you experience that at the level in which you drive?
Yeah, we still have reasonable G-forces. Like we're not going anywhere near that. My top speed in the cars that I race is about 220 kilometers an hour.
Still pretty fast.
Yeah, still pretty fast. And one of the things is too that you don't understand between a race car and a road car is that a race car doesn't have ABS brakes and a race car doesn't have traction control. So if you hit the accelerator too quick, it'll spin the car end for end. If you brake too hard, it'll also lock up and you'll go off. So yeah, it's a lot. Even though you're only at 220, it's a lot harder to drive than a road car.
Have you had a few epic crashes?
I've had a few epic crashes, yeah. Mm-hmm. So definitely a few that were my fault and definitely a few that weren't, but that's kind of part and parcel of what happens. The category I race in is Aussie race cars, and they're a custom-built race car, and all the cars are fundamentally exactly the same. So we have the same chassis, same tires, same engines. So it's supposed to be pretty much in the suspension setup and the driver that should really make the difference in it. So it's quite a close category and quite good racing.
You're someone that's been in business a while now, so you're probably a mentor to a lot of other people. But who's a mentor to you?
Yeah, I probably obviously look mainly to Craig Dixon, who owns Veneziano Coffee, and I worked for him for a number of years. It's interesting, I didn't realize the time, but he actually did a Bachelor of Business in Catering and Hotel Management at Victoria University, exactly the same as me, 8 years prior to where I did it. And he was the MC at a wedding, and we get on so well. I think part of it is too, a lot with the mentors is in the same industry. So then sometimes when I get a problem or I get an issue or something I don't understand, I mean, he's been there and done it. He's on a curve that's ahead of me, career-wise. So it's always interesting to bounce some ideas, off him. I think that's where I get in trouble sometimes. Like I get busted in the industry having lunch with him or having coffee with him, and people automatically, jump to some presumption that there's something going on or whatever.
You saw it, Axil?
Yeah. That somehow, you know what I mean? So no, we're still really like quite close, and he's somebody that I definitely wouldn't be where I am today without him. So yeah.
Where do you get inspiration from? For everyone needs to, I think it's important to evolve, think about what's next, keep with the times. Where do you get inspiration from for things in your business?
I think it'd be my team, to be honest. You posed this question to me, and I was trying to think about, because obviously with a young family now, like I'm not out at the hottest cafe every weekend. I'm not out at the hottest restaurant every, weekend. So I would think it's my team. I have like quite a young team. They're really connected and really out there looking at what's going on. Obviously, Matt and Jack have recently been in Panama and Colombia and doing some things. And so I would say the team really drives the direction of Axil. And obviously a number of our team members are owners of Axil. We've sold shares within our company. And those key staff members kind of drive that direction and where we're going to kind of go next.
I've been getting inspiration from a fair few sources lately, and recently we had a bit of a discussion before this started that you're actually a matcha hater. So I don't
know if hate is the right word.
You're a hater. You're a hater. You're a matcha hater.
It's just,
I'm a matcha guy. You can see the remnants. Get a bit of ASMR going here.
That looks great.
You can see I'm a matcha guy. I'm a matcha guy through and through. Let's on that. Do you reckon matcha is kind of like, is it just a fad that'll pass, or do you reckon it's
no, definitely not. I definitely think, and if you look around some numbers around alcohol consumption in the next generation, we are definitely going to see, hopefully to be honest, less and less of a reliance on alcohol. And therefore, you're going to see, I would say that's the niche in that cafe market, is to be able to provide some other drinks and things like that. We've seen it particularly so far in the Asian market where dessert focused, some type of signature drinks and sweeter drinks, because they're not as alcohol focused.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. They also therefore have a different perception of value. And one of the problems we have in Australia is around a $6 cup of coffee is a problem for people, but a $22 espresso martini is just fine. So there's some real differences there as well. I think that's going to change. I think as the next generation comes through and the alcohol consumption drops off, I think that's an opportunity.
$9 iced matchas pretty easy to sell as well, right?
Pretty crazy. We've done some ice drinks in summer and some different things, and you put a $12 price tag on them and no one blinks an eye at it. But if you charge $6 for a latte, it suddenly there's an issue, or people want to take issue with it. Coffee prices are probably more closely linked to petrol prices in a way. When we're talking about this, people are very sensitive to the price of petrol, and people are quite sensitive to the price of coffee. So we kind of just, can't complain about it. We just need to realize that and work, Well,
I kind of see the coffee thing as people don't want to pay more because they love it so much and they depend on it so much. And that's the part that I understand. It's like, well, I don't want to pay more for stuff. So when people are upset about it, it's like, actually, I get it. And everyone's got the economy at large is kind of, going through some pains at the moment, and, we understand it. But I think the reason people get so angry about it is because they love coffee so much. So, we can almost take it as a form of flattery to a degree.
Yeah. Victim of our own success.
Victim of our own success. That's another one. What's one thing we haven't spoken about today that you would like the listener to know about Dave Makin or Axil Coffee or just anything?
I think, it's funny that, obviously we've opened a number of stores and we've expanded. And the thing that really, that people always jump to that presumption that we're somehow like a franchise or something like that. But Zoe and I are, the owners of Axil from the very first day. 15 years later, Zoe and I are still the majority owners of Axil Coffee Roasters. The only other people are our, our staff and partners that we've sold some different shares to over the time. And we're as passionate about serving great coffee in our stores, whether we have one store or a number of different stores around Melbourne. We're still passionate about that. And so this year we'll see us open our first store outside of Melbourne.
Oh, yes.
So
where's that going to be?
Well, I haven't even told anyone yet.
Well, go on. Spill the beans right here.
All right. So we're opening in Sydney this year. So we're excited to open in Sydney this year. It's the first hospitality venture I've ever done outside of Melbourne in my career. So it's pretty exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. And that'll be in Surrey Hills. Yeah, correct. Surrey Hills is like the Sydney hotbed for good quality coffee. So, you got your Single O's and the Paramount Coffee Projects and Reuben Hills and whatnot. Okay, well done. I'm excited for that. That's just as you get off the train to Central. I go to Sydney pretty frequently, so I'll be seeing you there when it opens. Last question. Interview suggestion. Who would your recommendation be? Who would you want us to interview? Man, that's such a hard one. Who do you want to see on the coffee show with Kirk Pearson? It'd be interesting to understand some of the one thing that always gets me is when you look to America, and I think I know the answer already, but they obviously sell coffee companies over there and beverage companies over there for huge multiples, massive. I think Stumptown Coffee sold at like a 30 times multiplier or something, and Intelligentsia Coffee similar and everything like that. And one of the latest ones is Blank Street over there. It's a huge traction and stuff like that. It'd be really interesting. And I based a lot of our early stuff with Axil. I had a good friend of mine that was the general manager at Stumptown. And so I based a lot of our early decisions and stuff around their business model, and still to this day, I think it's such a great sort of company and business. So it'd be interesting to understand a little bit more about that American culture, whether it's maybe Blue Bottle or Stumptown or someone that's been able to scale at a lot faster rate. Somebody that I could look to and learn some things from, and how did they get to where they are? You got a name? Give us one name. That's the rule. You got to give us one name. Oh, I mean, one of the ones that always comes to mind, and it's just probably because it was my generation and I looked to it, but I would have thought that Doug Zell would be a really interesting guy to get some insight on and everything like that. I have bugged me. I always remember when I came second at the World Barista Championship, and he was like, nobody ever remembers second place, Dave. And it's still, there was like literally just after we got, and I was like, oh man. So, yeah.
Because you came second, of course.
Yeah. But he was, he's a really switched on guy. Mm-hmm. And I think he'd be somebody that maybe give us some insight a little bit more into how to grow and scale at a rapid rate.
Doug Zell, if you're listening, we'll be in contact very soon. If anyone has contact information for Doug Zell, you might even have some. Pass it on to your boy. Well, Dave Makin, that just about wraps it up for the coffee show. One more question before you go. Why the name Axil?
It's a botanical word. It comes out of the dictionary. It's the angle of where the stem comes off the main branch of a tree. So it's all trees, to be honest, not just coffee trees. But for us, it was the point of new life. It's where the bud blooms and the axle. And for us, it was the start of something new. It was Zoe and I both coming together to open our own project.
Interesting. Well, if you want to get some awesome coffee, you can find it at projectzero.coffee. I'd plug your business, but you roast my coffee for me. So,
the more you sell, the better it is.
Yeah, support us both. So it's projectzero.coffee, shipping Australia-wide. Dave Makin, thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome, and thanks to everyone for listening. We do a lot to make this podcast come together. We do a lot so that you can have a podcast for free. So if you don't mind me doing us the favor of subscribing, telling 2 friends, really help us grow the podcast. And in return, we'll just keep making you free podcasts to listen to, like this one here. That's a fair deal, isn't it?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds fair to me. All right. So projectzero.coffee. If you want some coffee, tell 2 friends, like, subscribe, YouTube, all that other stuff. Thank you for listening to The Coffee Show with Kirk Pearson. Thank you, Dave Makin, for joining me.
Pleasure.
Hooroo.